The significance of scalar energy-based healing is profound and will, without doubt, be the healing technology of our future world. Hi, I am John Michael Mallon. I am a physicist and electronics engineer and a co-founder of the Healing Universe. In this video, I will present amazing new insights into the role that scalar energy plays in our world, in our everyday lives, and in our health. Subtle energies have been used by healers from earliest times. Hands healing, distance healing, sound healing, directed prayer healing, and even the so-called placebo effect that is considered a nuisance effect by conventionally trained scientists and doctors, requiring introduction of double-blind protocols. For the past 60 years or so, mainstream research into energy-based healing has been sidelined in favor of the more commercially attractive pharmaceutical products that currently hold prime place in conventional medicine. Some scientists and medical doctors, however, have quietly been pursuing research into energetic-based therapies and have pushed the boundary of knowledge much further than is generally recognized. The anomalies posed by energetic healing, and in particular the importance of conscious intent in the healing process, has attracted physicists who were witnessing parallels with their other experimental work, where the observer was seen to influence the outcome purely by being an interested observer. To the general public, and indeed to the medical profession, the world of physics must seem more like an Alice in Wonderland story than a science that is in fact touching the very core of reality. To fully understand the science underlying energetic healing obviously requires a deep familiarity with physics, and in particular it requires a good understanding of the work of such famous physicists as Maxwell, Tesla, Planck, Einstein, Schrödinger, de Broglie, Dirac, Bohm, and Feynman. By their work, these physicists have collectively succeeded in dominating the greater part of the last century, and have paved the way for us finally to come to understand bioenergetics and subtle energy healing in a scientific context. Lack of familiarity with quantum mechanics and wave energy physics places a formidable hurdle in the path for all conventionally educated medical researchers and practitioners. Unfortunately, all conventional medical schools are still teaching science according to concepts and principles established by Isaac Newton in the early 18th century. In Newtonian mechanics, mass and energy are considered as separate, conservative mechanical properties. Modern-day medicine still closely adheres to the Newtonian concepts and considers the body to be a physical chemical unit, and carefully avoids dealing with questions of life energy and consciousness. Many quantum physics and wave energy-based devices are indeed routinely being used by doctors for patient diagnosis. However, instead of utilizing the energetic information provided by these devices directly to interpret the energetic state of the patient, they require it to be translated into a biochemical symptomatic interpretation. with which they find familiarity. In this video, I will attempt to remove or at least substantially lower the barriers of wave energy physics for those of you who would like to understand the science of energetic healing and are feeling excluded. There is no reason for you to not understand. The problem of your understanding lies with your teacher. To quote one of my college professors, "If you truly understand something, you will explain it simply." I therefore sincerely hope that in this presentation I can succeed to bring simplicity. Scientists, and I guess the same goes for most other professions, trade in confusion. I am convinced, however, that this is not always by desire, but because many self-appointed communicators simply do not adequately understand their subject. There is also the problem of the narrowness of specializations that they study. This serves to reward disjointedness and partial knowledge, as opposed to encouraging full understanding. It is important for all of us to familiarize ourselves with the scientific concepts that surround energetic healing, simply because it will play such a profound role for all of our lives and the lives of all humanity post the present era of invasive pharmaceutical medicine. On our website www.thehealinguniverse.com, you will find easy-to-read summaries of important research into bioenergetics, including DNA research that puts genetic engineering into the dark ages. If you wish to go even deeper, I recommend you to visit our website library. There you will find reprints of all of the scientific papers that are referenced in the summary pages. For whatever reason you are watching this presentation, I hope you will find answers to at least some of the questions that have pulled you to come. So now let me introduce you to the particular energy that is at the basis of everything in energetic healing, and indeed at the core of life itself. This healing and life energy has been called by many names over the centuries, but we will refer to it by its modern-day technical name of scalar energy. The term scalar simply means an amount or a quantity that does not possess a direction, like mass, or temperature, or pressure, or static electricity, all of which exist but are not going anywhere. This is as opposed to the kind of energy that is going somewhere, like the energy we feel in a flowing river, or in a blowing wind, or with exploding fuel driving the pistons in our car engine. This flowing or expansion-based energy is what many of us think of as being the only energy that there is. The less obvious and less visible scalar energy exists everywhere as an ocean of stationary energy, like a tension in the ether that we are living within, and which extends throughout all of the universe. It cannot be directly seen, nor for that matter measured with conventional instruments, which is the reason why most people are not so familiar with it. Scalar energy is the predominant energy in the universe. It is the energy of nature and is the energy of our bodies and is the energy of healing. Without becoming up close, personally familiar with scalar energy, I believe it is simply not possible to step into the new world where energy is tuned to interact with specific organs and with the entire body, and in so doing to cure illness and disease. So let's start breaking down the barrier. Imagine for a moment that you have lived your entire life on a little boat adrift in an immense ocean of water. Imagine your little boat to be situated right in the middle of a really big and fast current. In this situation, it would be impossible for you to appreciate or even to be aware that you are moving along on the current, except if you happened to spot a fixed point, like a pole rising from the ocean that had a sign attached to it announcing that it was fixed to the ocean floor. By seeing this pole racing past, you would instantly realize that you were on something very energetic, as opposed to being motionless on an infinite mill pond that you had always imagined to be surrounding you. Well, our situation on planet Earth, within our Milky Way galaxy, within the visible universe, is exactly like being on our little boat in the immense ocean. With all of our space explorations, we have not yet managed to discover any poles attached to the universe's floor, or in other words, any points that have zero energy. So, in reality, we are in exactly the same situation on planet Earth as we are on our imaginary little boat in the ocean, totally unappreciative of the sheer enormity of the energy that is surrounding us, scalar energy. From physics calculations, we obviously have a fair idea about the enormity of this energy, but I can tell you it is mind-blowingly gigantic. There is no comparison that we can make to illustrate its enormity. Even the energy within 1 cubic centimeter of space is as close to infinity as ever could be imagined. To attempt to compare it, for example, with the tremendous energies released by atomic bombs, even with millions of atomic bombs, still fails to give us any sense of its magnitude. And this is for every cubic centimeter of space, throughout all of space. This is the seething energetic ocean within which we live, the energy field of which we are part, the energy field that is us in every sense that you can imagine. What I will explain to you as I take you on this video journey of discovery will, I hope, help you to understand why it is If we are to enter the new era with best preparation, we must close the books on Newtonian medicine. Strange as it may seem, even though we are surrounded by such enormous scalar energy, it is impossible to observe it or measure it directly with present-day instruments. This is simply because we are totally immersed within it. However, there is some hope for getting acquainted with this elusive scalar energy because it announces its existence through patterns and phenomena that are observable. Just as on our little boat on the ocean, we manage to get a clue about the nature of the ocean when a breeze builds to a storm and causes waves to crash over our boat. We may not be able to deduce much hard information about the full extent of the ocean's energy from what we observe, but in no uncertain terms, we become very aware that it is enormous because of the pummeling we get from the crashing waves. On quieter days, we might take time out to study the waves and the patterns that they make as they interact with our little boat. And from our research, we might even start to engineer ways to harness them for our benefit. Scalar energy is composed of what we call stationary waves, like the waves you set up on a rope with one fixed end, when you flap the other end up and down. It is the kind of wave that is created on a violin string, as the bow causes it to vibrate. As you can imagine, the waves are running up and down the string, interfering with each other in such a way that they create a stationary buzzing pattern, a musical note. This is exactly how a scalar wave looks. It obviously contains energy, but it is going nowhere. So now I will explain how this type of wave, scalar waves, interact with each other to create what we call particles or matter. Of course, an atom does not look quite like the one you met in your school textbooks. Say goodbye to the old particle atom and say hello to the new wave-only version. I should point out that we do not do particles anymore. Not even the particles as in the wave-particle duality theory. No, there are no particles, only waves. Waves and more waves. The one confusion that I suspect could arise is caused by the fact that we have run out of new words to describe wave structures that appear to us as though they are particles. So what we do is to continue to use the word particle when referring to these wave structures. So when I mention particle, think the end points of waves where their directions are reversed. We therefore can define a particle as being the stationary wave energy structure that results when we get forward and time reversed waves that become locked in resonance with each other. You could therefore say that the rope that you were flapping connects two particles, One particle is at your hand, and the other particle the point where the rope ties to the wall. These two particles are locked together in resonance between two identical waves that are going in opposite directions, scalar energy waves. This illustrates the locked resonance structure that is an electron. The center point oscillates up and down. In other words, it oscillates between positive and negative, showing how the creation of an electron must be accompanied by its antiparticle, the positron. When several electrons create phase-locked resonance with each other, we have a synchronously resonating structure that forms an even bigger particle. This is the basis of all matter in the universe. When you reflect on us as energy beings, you can readily see how this might be so from this wave resonance simulation between electrons. Just try imagining zillions of waves being resonance locked to each other. That is our body. And you can imagine that the degree to which we maintain maximum phase-locked resonance between all of these wave particles is the degree to which we maintain perfect health and awareness. Not only are we the physical body that we see and feel, but you can now readily understand how it is that we extend into the space surrounding our physical bodies, with resonance locking taking place with other scalar waves from within the surrounding ether, with weaker degrees of resonance locking as distance from our physical body increases. This is the nature of our auras. You must realize that all of space is a resonating mist of phase-locked particles. Nowhere is there emptiness, not even in the farthest reaches of outer space. It is through this resonance-locked wave structure that all energy flows in the universe. When we contemplate how hard some materials can be, diamonds, for example, we can perhaps get an inkling of the enormous energy that is within the scalar waves that lock together the carbon atoms in phased resonance within it. In the words of Marcel Proust, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So let's look with new eyes at the many clues and patterns produced by the universal scalar energy. First, let's remind ourselves again how scalar waves appear on computer simulation. Now here is a pattern created by a vibrating flat plate that is covered with a sprinkling of sand. See how the sand has moved itself to make a pattern that shows the stationary scalar waves. This also applies to water. Here is a water drop being vibrated. Again, it shows the scalar wave patterns. Interesting to note the hexagon structure that is created by the resonance within this water drop. And here are microscope images of different snowflake crystals, and see how they are always hexagonal in shape. On a much larger scale, here is a photograph of the North Pole of Saturn. We can see the aurora, just as we see at the North Pole and South Pole of Earth. But see its hexagonal shape traced out by the clouds, that in this photograph are shown in red, and marked here by the green overlay. So from these examples we get confirmation that the kind of vibrational energy that affects the shape of snowflakes also acts across space. The flower of life symbol, composed of multiple evenly spaced overlapping circles, is considered sacred among many cultures and is viewed as a symbol of sacred geometry. It also has a hexagonal shape. This is an atomic force microscope image of the surface of a silicon crystal. You can see the silicon atoms locked together in a scalar wave pattern. This seashell shows a pattern that obviously is reflecting a scalar wave pattern. The spiral shape is also associated with scalar energy, but we will discuss that in more detail later. I would like to quote these words from Albert Einstein. "He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed." Again, to remind you of our starting to be familiar computer-simulated phase-locked scalar wave patterns, look in particular at the space between the two peaks, the kind of line pattern. Clouds that we see from this aircraft window look amazingly similar. And these ones looked at from below also display a similar scalar wave pattern. Now, this cloud that the meteorologists call a lenticular cloud is actually formed by a particularly high scalar energy associated with this mountain. This is Mount Fuji in Japan. Lenticular clouds are stationary lens-shaped clouds that form over particular mountains and do not move with the wind. Aircraft tend to avoid flying near these kinds of cloud because of the unusually high turbulence associated with them. This turbulence is evidence of a flow of scalar energy that is attempting to redress the imbalance in the energy field created by the mountain. Here we see lenticular clouds over Jefferson Mountain and over Lord Howe Island in New Zealand. Now here is a really interesting cloud, one that is hugging a military aircraft. What is revealing about this is that the aircraft is causing a disturbance to the energy field around it. Notice that the disturbed field is only on the top side of the aircraft. This aircraft obviously has wing design features that enable it to tap energy from the scalar energy field, or to extract what is known as free or 0 point energy. Have you noticed that the clouds do not blow off with the wind created by the aircraft, even though it is flying supersonic? We mentioned also that the lenticular clouds over the mountains also do not move with the wind. The cloud formations exist only within the disturbed energy space. This observed phenomenon provides a significantly different insight into how clouds are actually formed, as compared to what you were taught at school. This shows a similar cloud formation, but associated with a very different type of aircraft. This is a military drone which travels at only 135 miles per hour. The energy field disturbance is surrounding a particular spot on the aircraft as a bubble cloud. The energy field disturbance is caused by powerful scalar wave devices that are on board the aircraft. The military obviously has extremely strong interest in scalar waves simply because of the infinite energy that is within the scalar energy field. As we said earlier, we are not talking atomic bomb energies here, but much, 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 much greater. At this point, I would like to mention something about the history of discovery associated with scalar wave energy. Scalar wave energy is not a recent discovery. It was first predicted by James Clerk Maxwell in the mid-1800s, when he succeeded in linking for the first time the apparently separate phenomena of electricity and magnetism through his famous Maxwell's equations. Just as all new ideas that threaten to shake up established thinking are resisted, so also was it with Maxwell. His equations were not readily accepted by the scientific establishment of the day. So, after his death, Oliver Heaviside replaced the electromagnetic potential field, or scalar field, by force fields, thereby reducing the original 20 equations down to the 4 equations that are taught in schools today as Maxwell's equations. The modifications were made to Maxwell's original equations simply because the scalar energy content was inconveniently too large as compared with the vector electromagnetic content. This meddling with Maxwell's equations has meant that most physicists and engineers who are not involved in scalar energy research are generally unfamiliar with scalar energy. First experimental demonstration of scalar waves and scalar energy dates back to 1905 and Nikola Tesla. Here you can see him sitting in front of a scalar antenna. This shows his magnifying transmitter generating millions of volts. The arcs are some 7 meters long. And this is a tower that he constructed as a wireless power transmission system, a scalar energy transmitter. So now let's examine a few more pictures of scalar wave patterns. Again, as a reminder, here is our computer-simulated scalar wave pattern. And this is the sand under shallow water at the seashore. The sand is obviously acting according to phase-locked scalar waves. And here are sand waves over sand dunes in the desert. From this view from an aircraft window, we see mountain ranges that are arranged into similar scalar wave patterns, but obviously they are on a much bigger scale. This satellite view of a mountain range in Nevada shows an even bigger scalar wave pattern. Imagine, if you will, the energy that can create mountain ranges. But remember, we have already mentioned that the energy within every 1 cubic centimeter of space is beyond anything we can make meaningful comparison with. It is simply way off the energy measurement scale. Now, this photograph shows that scalar waves are not a phenomenon local to Earth. This is Victoria crater on Mars. The pattern is very beautifully scalar. And here are scalar wave created dunes inside the Endurance crater, also on Mars. And here is a fingerprint. Do you realize the significance of this in how we might begin to view ourselves? Especially when we consider that every human has a uniquely different fingerprint pattern. And we also possess a uniqueness of spirit. But look at this, a fingerprint pattern within the Orion Nebula. Interestingly, NASA describes these waves as gravitational waves. So here we are linking gravity to scalar energy, which, bear in mind, is linked to scalar waves that are time-reversed, phase-locked waves. As we said at the beginning, there are no more particles. Everything is waves. In case you are starting to feel that only sand and clouds and cosmic dust are involved in scalar wave patterns, look at this photo. This shows thermal waves within the surface of Saturn's moon Enceladus. These appear as stationary hot and cold bands, just like the dermal ridges of your fingerprint, or the bands of rippled sand, or the parallel bands of clouds. Here we see atoms grouping themselves together when they are freely floating in a laser beam. They naturally form a cubic crystal structure. This is how they must arrange themselves in order to achieve maximum phase-locked resonance connection with each other, or in other words, to achieve a condition of minimum energy. Crystals are simply a three-dimensional arrangement created as each atom wave becomes phase-locked with surrounding atoms. It is just a three-dimensional version of the two-dimensional sand ripples on the seashore. Hollow shapes are also the handicraft of scalar energy waves. The honeybee is obviously a scalar wave generator. Again, notice the hexagonal shape of honeycombs. And here we see resonance patterns like we saw with the sand on a vibrating plate and the vibrating water drop. But here the patterns are within the rod cells that form the retina of a frog's eye. The meanders of a river are not produced by chance. They also result from scalar wave energy. the water in the river is simply interacting with the scalar energy field around it, and its meandering is an energy transfer mechanism. We will discuss more about energy transfer mechanisms shortly, but as a side observation, let me mention that the meandering of a river displays a relationship to the mathematical number pi. Have you ever noticed how water droplets never take a straight path down a window pane? Even its so-called surface tension forces that shape the raindrop are scalar wave generated. Have you ever noticed how all natural paths tend to meander, like this cow path across this meadow pasture? The ocean tides are also resonance-locked scalar waves. They show us that there is a phase-locked scalar wave pattern existing between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. In the 6th century, Pythagoras was teaching his students that there were 3 kinds of music: the music produced by instruments, the music of the human body, and the music of the cosmos, and that the different types of music were interrelated, and that ailments caused by discord in the music of a person's body could be healed by music from an instrument, and that the earthly music made by instruments was only a faint echo of the music of the heavens. Until this point, we have been concerned principally with recognizing scalar energy wave resonances. In the next portion of this video, I would like to discuss energy transfers within the scalar energy field. As children, we all played, I'm sure, with spinning tops. If you did you know that you were playing with one of the greatest scalar energy transfer toys ever invented? The appeal of a spinning top is its otherworldly behavior. Try to knock it over and it straightens right back up. Try to stop it and it evades your grasp. But with the spinning top, we see the object that is spinning. In this picture, one of the most everyday occurrences, we have what we might describe as an invisible spinning top, a water vortex in the kitchen sink. In this we can see the energy transaction that is happening by the associated spinning water that surrounds the vortex. What we are witnessing is a scalar energy field gateway in operation. Like everything in nature, the infinite is simply a fractal of the infinitesimal. So here we have the small as in the kitchen sink drain hole, and here we have the large as in an entire galaxy. As I mentioned earlier, the energy that is stored in the scalar energy field is on an infinite scale. So the amount of energy that might be tapped from it is also mind-blowingly massive. This galaxy is an energy gateway that has opened in the scalar energy field of the universe. Can you imagine the energy that is being released through this galactic scale vortex? Scalar field energy gateways or vortices are exploited in nature by all manner of creatures and plants. By creating and managing vortices by its fins, a fish can tap into the scalar energy field of a flowing river in order to remain motionless and stationary against the flowing current. However, once threatened, it disturbs the energy tap, and in an instant it receives an energy blast that propels it out of danger. This same vortex-based energy tapping capability allows fish to ascend waterfalls that to non-scalar aware observers seems incomprehensible. Engineers studying the bumblebee conclude that it is impossible for it to fly. The ratios of wingspan to body weight simply won't allow it to get airborne. Similarly, they deduce that a dragonfly cannot hover. Here is a photograph of the region surrounding the wing of a hovering dragonfly. Notice the swirling energy gateway patterns, the vortices. Dragonflies and fish are not the only tappers of free energy from the scalar energy field. Birds tap this free energy as they fly. By tapping energy from the scalar field, migrating birds can fly thousands of miles, a feat that seems to bewilder many so-called experts. It is interesting to observe the formations assumed by some migrating flocks. See how this arrow profile for geese resembles the shape of our spinning top toy. Not only do the birds create their own vortices to tap the 0-point scalar energy, but they fall into a phase-locked resonance pattern that binds all of the birds together as a unit, like happens when atoms suspended in a laser beam lock themselves into a crystal-shaped formation of lowest energy. The amazing flying formations of starlings is also a phase-locked frequency formation. The individual birds simply allow themselves to fall in to a position which has lowest energy. Just as a crystal is formed, or a mountain range is formed, the particles, whether we consider them as electrons, atoms, grains of sand, planets, or flying birds, all simply want to be in the place where they find lowest energy. But look at this amazing flight formation of starlings. They have actually created a vortex. Can you imagine the energetic transformations that they must be experiencing? Tendrils of climbing plants are frequently shaped so as to stimulate the creation of air vortices that would propel them beyond their normal reach. Here we see a playful little vortex in contact with a jet engine as it awaits clearance for takeoff. But this vortex is not so playful. The scale of destruction of tornadoes is often compared with that of a nuclear bomb blast. Meteorologists still stubbornly subscribe to the old Newtonian scientific model, and so are unable to explain the cause or the source of energy for tornadoes. Strange phenomena are frequently observed in the debris after a tornado, like this straw piercing a post, twigs embedded in masonry, or even a blade of grass penetrating a fragment of glass, or this vinyl record disc that has managed to become embedded in a fallen utility pole. Within the vortex space, there is temporary disruption in the phase-locked structures of the materials present. In other words, apparently hard materials can become unlocked, and so they momentarily can become more like a vapor than a rigid solid. Vortices appear everywhere we look, like in a flowing river, or in a rising trace of smoke, like this from burning incense. Vortices are the energy transfer channels or gateways through which energy flows whenever a disturbance is caused in the scalar energy field. The energy flow may be what we call subtle energy, as in the case of healing, or it may be explosive energy, as we see in the great natural disasters around the world. Vortices are the sources of power in powerful riptides that can run several meters per second. Hurricanes are atmospheric vortices. Before the next picture, memorize the pattern of this hurricane. Now, is this not awe-inspiring? Vortices as energy gateways have been known by ancient civilizations. Chakra points have always been considered to be spinning vortices. But look at the vortex swirl of this, our fingerprint. Can this help to explain the reason our hands have long been instruments of healing? By our touch with the patient, energy channels are established through the resonance-locked scalar frequencies that are within our fingertips. The resonance frequencies that create and maintain our fingerprint patterns. The uniqueness of our fingerprints is a reflection of the uniqueness of our energy being and the uniqueness of spirit. The double helix formation of our DNA is a scalar wave energy structure. The double helix structure as a scalar energy formation can be seen in this picture of the aurora phenomena that we can see close to the north and south poles of Earth. And we have discovered a double helix galaxy. Our DNA molecules are actually transmitters and receivers of scalar wave information. They emit and receive rotationally polarized light. And they respond to music and to the human voice. This quote from Albert Einstein is appropriate in the context of what we have just discussed. Human beings, vegetables are cosmic dust. We all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper. Next, we will discuss the current state of the art in regard to engineering applications and designs involving scalar wave concepts. Again, we start by reviewing military applications. Isn't it a sad reflection on our present society that we see so much research funding being favoured to military systems research? Systems that are termed defensive, but that is only in name. Large area antennae sites, such as this high-energy active auroral research program facility in Alaska, are capable of triggering powerful meteorological and geological phenomena anywhere around the world. Scalar cloud patterns such as this show the scalar wave disturbances caused by such transmitters. Clouds are commonly used for the purpose of providing feedback information to the testers of military research devices. Often, however, suitable cloud cover does not exist when scalar tests are scheduled, so clouds are made to order. This is done by adding metallic crystalline materials to jet fuel, which results in the high persistence sky trails that we call chemtrails. Here is a pattern of a sky prepared for tests. This shows a chemtrail that is split by wave actions. And this shows multiple right angles pulled in a chemtrail. The Missile Shield program developed by the United States is a scalar energy-based application, and it is managed by sites such as this with odd-looking planar antennae. And in close-up view, this is another planar antenna, which is called a planar magnetic speaker. It is capable of projecting high-intensity sound as a magnetic scalar wave to any vector location within a several-mile radius without losing intensity. I would like you to memorize the characteristic shape of the planar antenna circled in red before you see the next picture, which is a scan electron microscope generated image of the formations of tiny cilia hairs within the inner ear. Now memorize the appearance of this antenna, which is part of a large geographical array of similar antennae that are used to steer and focus scalar energy transmissions to targeted vector locations around the world. And here we see it showing up as part of the cilia hair formations in the inner ear. When we look at the stamen within a flower, we see patterns and structures that we can now recognize as having a scalar energy function. And here we see the same cilia-like structures of the inner ear or of a flower stamen, but here we are looking at a scan electron microscope image of the outer rod segment of the retina of the eye. And here we see the hexagonal honeycomb shapes that these rods assume as they arrange themselves within the retina mosaic. Now here we see a bee pollinating a flower, and this is a scan electron microscope of the human tongue. We are all familiar with the slow turning wind energy towers that extract energy from a passing airflow. Efficiencies achieved have dramatically increased with the addition of vortex generators on the leading edges of the turbine blades. This concept is based on the vortex generators on the tail fins of whales. As we mentioned earlier, fish and birds and insects all use vortex generation techniques to improve their movement performance and to tap additional energy as free energy from the scalar energy field. This set of vortex generators on the whale's tail gives a kind of new meaning to the aviation expression of having a strong tailwind. But if you look carefully at this picture, you will see vortex generating bumps on the dermal ridges of our fingertips. The dimples in golf balls are vortex generators that add scalar field energy to the ball in flight. Dimples, after all, are the inverse of bumps. The performance of small aircraft can be substantially boosted by adding vortex generators to the top surface of the wings. Rotating blades with double helical design can tap scalar energy in wind energy applications. Tall, cylindrical chimneys are prone to self-destruct by vortex-induced turbulence that they create on the downwind side. This problem is overcome by adding a double helix to the chimney's outer surface. This shows a computer simulation of the process by which inward waves are converted into outward waves. The phenomenon of spin can also be visualized by the double rotation that the waves undergo as they transit the toroid core. This is our toroidal energy field structure model of planet Earth. When we look down on the north or south pole from space, we see evidence of the hole in the donut by the ring produced by the aurora lights. And here we see the donut in this gamma ray image of a magnetic star in the constellation of Pictor. Have you ever imagined that an apple is actually a donut? And here is a galactic donut cloud. By viewing the donut or toroid from above, we see a spiral pattern that is known as the Fibonacci spiral. It has a special shape that is based on a mathematical linkage that exists between circles and squares. This is another type of scalar antenna that is created as a helically wound toroid. Look carefully at the pattern that is created by the windings. And here we see it repeated in the structure of the spiral aloe and in the hearts of many flowers. This exact pattern also shows itself in this spiral galaxy. And again, in the human ear, we have it showing in the spiral cochlea, the hollow bone inside which the tiny hairs which we were looking at earlier are located. Let us recall again the phase-locked wave structure from our computer simulation. Instead of visualizing clouds or sand, let us now consider light. Specifically, we are talking about special coherent light, laser light. Laser light is created by the same wave dynamics as we created by flapping the rope that we had tied to the wall. Forward and time-reversed waves on the rope created the frequency-locked scalar wave on the rope. So also in lasers. Forward and time-reversed light waves set up a scalar wave which we call a laser beam. This picture shows that when we inject several atoms into a laser beam, the individual atoms will phase lock into the stationary scalar wave of the laser beam and will settle into the lowest energy pockets within the beam where they are trapped. It may be difficult to imagine the reality that light creates variations in its local gravitational field. But just as we saw with sand ripples and wave clouds and shape-throwing flocks of starlings and atoms locking into crystal formations, all particles migrate to the lowest energy points in the local space. This is the nature of gravity. Here we see a device that traps droplets of water within a steerable laser beam. The droplets can then be transported as desired by redirecting the laser beam. Through what we have discussed up to this point, we must agree that everything is not as we have believed it to be. In fact, I think you will be amazed at how little actually appears to be left standing of what you were taught at school or in college. I have discovered in my own journey of re-education that I now understand why I found it so difficult to fully grasp much of the material I was taught during my years of study at physics and engineering college. The reason is simply that the concepts were too complicated to be true. I find there is great wisdom in these words of Confucius. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. Confucius was born around 500 BC. Isn't it amazing how little has changed in the 2,500 years since then? Let's take a journey back in human time. We are aware of many great projects from the distant past. Ancient standing stone circles dot the landscape of the British Isles, like this little stone circle at Drumbeig in Ireland, or the famous Stonehenge in England. Then there are the truly massive pyramids in many countries around the world, with massive stones that are perfectly fitted. Consider the enormous sizes of some of the stones that were transported long distances to the sites of construction. This stone at a quarry in Lebanon weighs over 1,000 tons. The Great Pyramid at Giza had been clad with massive slabs of polished limestone. All that remains intact are these that we can see around its base. Can you imagine these slabs weighing 10 to 20 tons being placed with a surrounding gap of only 1/50th of an inch, a half millimeter, the thickness of a razor blade? Satellite mapping shows that the Great Pyramid at Giza is constructed within an accuracy of 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch on a base area of 13 acres. Also, satellite mapping shows that the sides of the Great Pyramid are concave to the same curvature as the Earth. Isn't it time that we stopped denying the knowledge that our ancients possessed? I do not propose to have a theory as to how these massive stones were quarried, transported and raised in construction, or indeed what their uses were. But I will make some scalar energy-inspired observations. Pyramids are not only a phenomenon on planet Earth. Here is a pyramidal structure from planet Mars that is of similar size to the Great Pyramid at Giza. Pyramids were built in a time when love and respect was present in humanity. This is the only period which produced stone art that shows someone giving a flower to another. These are the daughters of Nefertiti. I draw your attention to the shapes of their heads. Here is a skull from Peru in South America. And here is another one. We mentioned earlier the beautiful lenticular clouds that routinely form over particular mountains because of the effects the scalar energy of these mountains cause within the surrounding scalar energy field. Like this formation over Mount Rainier in Washington State, and this one over St. Helens volcano, and this one over Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii, and this absolutely magnificent one over the volcanic mountain Kaituna in New Zealand. Three things I want to point out. One is that these lenticular clouds only occur over volcanoes, active or extinct. So we see that energy gateways exist through volcanoes, stargates if you wish to call them by another name. The second is that the word pyramid is composed of the Greek words para, meaning fire, and medos, meaning measures. The third is that pyramids are extremely similar in shape to volcanic cones. Now here is an interesting picture. It is a Kirlian photograph that was taken of a scale model of the Great Pyramid at Giza with a Tesla coil placed at its center. The double helix that can be seen emanating from the top of the pyramid has laser-like coherence. Could it be that our ancient ancestors were masters of scalar energy? Humanity is obviously no stranger to transition. Some great transition brought a disconnect between the harmonious and loving pyramid building era and our present era that is based on fear. We are currently facing into another era change, and it probably will be as dramatic as the era change previous. Mathematicians refer to the trip point when exponential growth breaks down as the point of singularity. As we can see through many metrics, we are fast approaching this limit point. Volcano activity is on an exponential rise, as is world earthquake activity, as is world population growth and economic growth. And economic growth, incidentally, has now bumped into its point of singularity, and the balloon bursts. Whatever other factors may contribute to the coming change, it appears that the galactic alignment of 2012 will be the actual change-over point of phase and time reversal. Here I would like to briefly revisit the ancient flower of life symbol that we saw contained only two shapes, circles and hexagons, and to point out why it is that these two shapes, the circle and the hexagon, are the only two basic shapes that show themselves to us in scalar wave energy phenomena. As we see in this symbol, the two shapes cause each other, and so neither one can exist without the other. This is also how it is in scalar energy. We have two waves that cause each other, and by their phase-locked resonance with each other, they create all things. It is interesting to note that the circle is the shape that results when you have maximum area enclosed by a minimum perimeter, whereas a hexagon, on the other hand, is the shape that results when you have a minimum area enclosed by a maximum perimeter. They are the simultaneous expressions of expansion and contraction. The circle is expansion and the hexagon is contraction. We can visualize these expansions and contractions beautifully by tracing the colored spiraling lines. The exponential increase that we are witnessing in disasters and crises around the world, even the economic collapse and global warming, are all associated with this cyclical phase and time reversal event. We cannot say that expansion is better than contraction, or that one is more important than the other. Simply, neither one could exist without the other. Unquestionably, we have reached the end of the expansion era, and the contraction era is beginning. Note that in astrological terms, we have reached the end of the age of Pisces, and we are entering the age of Aquarius. During these times of confusion, which are a natural consequence of this change, where everything we have known as familiar and stable must fall away, it is important for us to realize that we are not isolated beings. We are existing in our physical form for a purpose that cannot be understood through an earth-bound human body-mind. We do know that we are all waves that are frequency resonance locked with each other and with all of the universe. Let me try to describe these waves in a different way, in a way which, if you like, is a phase and time reversal to the reasoning mind. The mind that depends on models of physics and mathematics and computer simulations. A happy dog wags his tail. A wave therefore means, I am delighted to see you. Two people meet and they shake hands in greeting. A wave therefore means, we are friends. A mother rocks her baby to sleep. A wave therefore means comfort and security. Children wave goodbye. A wave therefore means you will be in my heart always, wherever I go. The ocean waves draw us to its shore. A wave, therefore, also means connectedness to the entire universe. Because of the fundamental importance of scalar waves and scalar energy in underpinning energetic healing-based therapies, and the absence of any scientifically based overviews, I have attempted by this video to fill this void. My scientific interest in this field of scalar wave and scalar energy goes back many years. But it was because of conventional medicine's inability to cure chronic illness that caused me to decide some 5 years ago to dedicate the remaining years of my life journey here to increasing awareness and knowledge of scalar energy and healing, and to finding a means by which scalar energy healing therapies could be provided freely to all who are in need. I was first introduced to actual energetic healing devices as constructed by pioneering researchers, the bravest of the brave, who endured prosecution and continual harassment for daring to promote energetic devices of healing, by the person who is the other co-founder of the healing universe, Wani. Through her amazing healing work, Wani had, by a more intuitive path, come to understand the importance of scalar energy in healing. The information provided in this video is simply too important to limit its availability to those who have ability to pay. We therefore have decided to make it available as a free download on our website. We sincerely hope that many other website owners will help us in bringing this video into wider awareness around the world by also hosting it on their websites as a free download. I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that you have found it to carry the information in simplicity. And finally, I ask you to join with us in helping to create the most beautiful gift of healing as a gift from our generation to the children of the world and to the generations to come. Thank you.